Well, for more, we can speak now to Henri Thulliez, who's a lawyer and former coordinator at Human Rights Watch for the victims of Hissène Habré. Can I just start by asking you, first of all, for your reaction to the news of Habre's death?
Well, my first thoughts go for the victims who have been fighting for more than 20 years to get him on trial and to get him convicted. And I think about all these victims who died on the path and all these victims who still haven't been repaired as they should have, since the court in Dakar, but also a court in Chad, required them to receive funds, as the excellent documentary just showed. So my first thoughts are for the victims. And we hope that such a precedent will happen again for all the massive abusers to be tried before court.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the precedent in just a moment, but just for the benefit of our viewers, just give us a reminder of some of the key, perhaps the most appalling things that Habré did during his 8 years in power.
Well, I think his jails and the way systematic torture was used by his DDS, his political police. You couldn't have any opponent, any freedom of expression, any way to challenge the government without going through jail and systematic torture. You know, if you used to belong to an ethnic group and yourself you're an opponent to Hissène Habré, not only will you be arrested, but all the people, all the members of your ethnic group will be also, purchased and tortured. You have like several ethnic groups like that who suffered. You have the Hajarai, you have the Sahawa, and you also have all the population in the south of Chad who in 1984 suffered. You had dozens of villages completely burned. You had people who had been tortured and killed. But one thing which for me struck me the most is the fact that some women were forced to be sent to the desert to serve as sexual slaves for the soldiers. This is only someone with huge cynicism can do something like that. And I will never forget the faces of these women when they were in court facing Hissène Habré and explaining how they were raped by soldiers under the control of Hissène Habré.
Okay, so a catalogue of appalling crimes committed during his 8 years in power. And at the time, and we're going back here to 1982, to the period 82 to 90, what was France's stance towards Hissène Habré?
You know, France and other countries such as the United States helped Hissène Habré to take power and help him to keep power because they saw him as a bulwark against Gaddafi and Libya. But they knew about the crimes that were being committed. They knew about the violations, and yet they continued to assist him. It's only around the end of his presidency when France thought that Habré was getting too close to the United States that they decided to stop supporting him, and they started to support Idriss Déby. Unfortunately, today, neither France nor the United States have conducted impartial investigation in their own country to try to understand who did what and why these countries, our democratic countries, helped him to keep power. And it's important to look at the past to better see how we can change things in the present.
And just going back to what you were saying at the beginning, and I said I'd pick you up on this, the issue of the precedent that was set. How significant was the sentencing of Habré at the time, and what were the repercussions of that, do you think?
Well, you have a former dictator who got convicted for life in prison for crimes against humanity, war crimes, torture, sexual slavery. And this was done by a tribunal that was created by the African Union and Senegal only to try his crimes. And that was a very strong signal because this tribunal was created because the victims and the civil society organizations gathered and forced Senegal and the African Union to create such a tribunal. But it shouldn't be that complicated for victims to get justice done in Africa. And we think that with this example should be used again, and we should create a precedent for all the former head of states, like Hissène Habré, to be tried. And today, when we look at the crimes that are being committed in South Sudan, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, etc., we need to keep hope. hope in justice and in the fact that justice will go after those who commit such violent and massive crimes.
Henri Thulliez, lawyer and former coordinator at Human Rights Watch for the victims of Hissène Habré. Thank you very much indeed for sharing that with France 24.